Come on in, son. Come on in. You got no business being down here.
How you doing, Sam?
What you doing?
Get out of your mouth! Crazy! Absolutely lost it. Maybe we don't need any more impersonation.
Hey, Mr. John, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yes, do you live here in LA?
Yes, I do, right here in Hollywood.
All right, so we're here to tell you a story about James Brown, right? What did you do for James Brown, and how long did you work for James Brown?
I was head of security for Mr. Brown for approximately 18 years.
18 years? I thought 8 years. It was a lot. When you met him?
I met him during a time when he was getting the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grammys. I was at that time the security director for the Grammys.
Uh-huh.
And they had come, and a lady called Bonnie Hilton Sweeney was his front person. And apparently their passes and everything was all messed up and they couldn't get in. And they called on the radio and I came down and talked to them and I got them their credentials and stuff in like 5 minutes and they were backstage. Well, he was, Mr. Brown, he was impressed with that.
Mm-hmm.
So after the show was over, he asked me what I was doing the following week and I said, well, I don't know, I don't think anything. And he asked me if I wanted to come to New York for a show and work on his staff. And I said, well, yeah, I think so. So I went to New York and I worked on his staff and I did that, for a couple of months. And there was a time then after that he made me head of security for him.
Wow.
So from that point on, I traveled with him everywhere we went.
Did you ever get fired? Because I did.
He had, he was always known as the hardest working man in show business. Well, he made me the hardest working security person in show business.
Yeah, I know, right?
Definitely.
So you met him through Miss Bonnie Sweeney,
right?
Because that's how I got my job too, through Miss Bonnie Sweeney. So that's funny that we get them. Well, she was in LA, the person that would take care of his business.
Right. James Brown's offices were on Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
And that's where I first met her because I had a security office in that building, on the same building.
All right. So tell me another story that you remember about James Brown.
There's a lot of them. I mean, I remember when we were in New York. Mm-hmm. We were doing the live at the Apollo 2 at the Apollo Theater, and Steve Harvey at the time was the MC. I remember it was like lunchtime, and I wanted to get something to eat, so the only place was down the street, and we're right there in the middle of Harlem. So I walked down to the McDonald's, but I had my jacket on that said Living in America because that was the time we were doing the Living in America tour.
Okay.
And I walked into McDonald's, it was a long line and everything. I was the only white person there. And so I kind of felt a little intimidated. These two guys come in, 2 or 3 guys came in and, pretty big sized guys. And everybody's watching me, looking at me. And they all of a sudden they said, you're head of security for Mr. Brown? I said, yeah. They said, well, man, you ain't got time to be waiting in this line. They took me up front and get my food and everything and all that. That was one of the times. Then there was another time that we were in Harlem also. We were outside Reverend Al Sharpton's office. Uh-huh. And this little elderly lady behind me tapped me on the shoulder and she says, excuse me, sir, you head of security for Mr. Brown? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, but you're white. Everybody started laughing, but Mr. Brown turned around and said, don't worry about it. He may be white on the outside, but he's black on the inside.
On the inside, right?
So that was a couple of things that I remember real well about him. But he was definitely a great guy to work for. He treated everybody like family. Everybody was called by their surnames, no matter how long he knew you or anything else. It's all Mr. this or Mrs. this.
Yes.
Never anybody called by their first names.
And he was very approachable.
Oh, yes. I mean, in all the years that I was with him, I don't think he ever called me John. It was always Mr. Hall.
Yeah, I was Miss Ray.
Yeah.
So, I need your impersonation of James Brown.
I don't think
Just a little one. I know you have a little one.
A lot of times Mr. Brown would call me in the middle of the night over things and he'd, it's like I'd be waking up or something and he'd say, Mr. Hall. Say, what you doing? I was sleeping, Mr. Brown. But that's the way he was. He was that type of person. It'd be about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd be getting a phone call from him just out of the blue for no reason whatsoever. I mean, and he was a very, very generous person. He wanted us all to look sharp, be on time. It was the only time in my life that I ever had a job that I had to wear a suit every day.
I know.
And a different suit every day, not the same one the next day. And if I didn't have him, he made sure I had him.
Really?
So he was very good at that.
Yeah. He called me a couple of times too at 5 a.m. He said, "Baby, what are you doing?" I'm asleep. Of course, in Georgia it was 8. It was 5 a.m. here, right? And I'm asleep. You're a good girl. Why?
There were definitely some very good times with him. And some funny times.
Yes.
I remember a time we were going to Aspen, Colorado, and they have a very small airstrip there. And we were flying in the Learjet of his. And they had developed some kind of gas leak or something, and it was a very short runway anyway. And they had notified us that they have an emergency landing. And anyway, as we were landing, they told us as soon as we landed we needed to get off the plane. So we landed, and the plane finally came to a stop. Mr. Brown was sitting in the farthest back part of the plane with his wife. And I'm up toward the front. Well, everybody else is on the plane. As soon as the door came down the plane, Mr. Brown soon passed all of us.
Running.
He was out the door, and he got on the ground, and he just bent over to kiss the ground. And I said, as he was coming, I said, Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, she's on her own.
I'm saving
But that was
myself.
one of the
Save yourself.
funnier times.
Save
Funnier
yourself.
times.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.